There are moments in life when the weight inside your heart feels too heavy to carry, yet you keep moving, smiling, speaking, pretending that everything is fine. But deep within, there is a quiet ache, an unspoken pain that lingers in the shadows of your soul. And tonight, I want you to understand something very clearly, that pain you feel is real, and it matters. You don't have to hide it, and you don't have to be ashamed of it. So many people have learned to silence their emotions. They've been taught to be strong, to push through, to ignore the wounds as if they will somehow disappear on their own. But emotional pain does not vanish when it is ignored. It settles deeper. It becomes a quiet burden that shapes your thoughts, your reactions, even the way you see yourself. And before long, you may not even recognize the person you've become. But there is a sacred moment that changes everything, and that is the moment you stop running. The moment you become honest, not with the world, not with those around you, but with God. Because He already sees what you've been trying so hard to hide. He knows the nights you couldn't sleep, the thoughts you couldn't silence, the tears you wiped away before anyone noticed. And He is not waiting to judge you for it. He is waiting for you to bring it to Him. You see, healing does not begin with perfection. It begins with truth. It begins when you say, "This is where I am. This is what I feel. This is what hurts." There is something powerful about that kind of honesty. It breaks the chains of denial. It opens a door that has been closed for far too long. And I sense that there are those listening right now who have carried pain from years ago, words that were spoken over you, wounds that were never healed, disappointments that left a mark on your spirit. You tried to move on, you tried to forget, but the memory still lingers. The feeling still returns when you least expect it. And you've wondered, why am I still like this? Why does it still hurt? It's because your heart has been waiting for acknowledgement, not avoidance. Not distraction, acknowledgement. When you bring your pain into the light, something begins to shift. The darkness loses its power. The weight begins to lift. Not all at once, but gently, as if something unseen is reaching into the depths of your soul and saying, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." There is no need for polished words in that moment. No need for a perfect prayer. Sometimes, the most powerful cry is the simplest one, "Help me." And when that cry comes from a place of sincerity, heaven responds, not with noise, not with pressure, but with a quiet, undeniable presence that begins to surround you. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are not broken because you've been hurt. You are human. And more than that, you are seen, you are known, and you are deeply loved. The pain you've carried does not define you, but acknowledging it is the first step toward freedom. So don't push it down anymore. Don't pretend it isn't there. Bring it forward. Lay it out honestly, just as it is, messy, complicated, and real. Because it is in that place of raw truth that something sacred begins to unfold. Something that cannot happen while you are hiding. And as you begin to open your heart in this way, you will notice a gentle shift within you. Not because everything has suddenly changed around you, but because something has started to change within you. The walls you built for protection begin to soften. The heaviness begins to loosen its grip. This is where healing begins, not in the absence of pain, but in the courage to face it with truth. And when you finally allow yourself to say, "This is what hurts," you make room for something greater to enter and begin the work your heart has been longing for. And as you begin to open your heart in that honest, vulnerable way, something sacred follows that moment, an invitation. Not a distant formal request, but a deeply personal calling from within your spirit. Because once the pain is acknowledged, once the walls begin to come down, there is now space. Space for the Holy Spirit to enter in. You see, healing is not something you manufacture on your own. It is not something you force through effort or willpower. There are places in the human heart that only the presence of the Holy Spirit can reach. Places so deep, so hidden, that even words cannot fully describe them. And yet He knows exactly where they are. But here is what must be understood. He does not force His way in. The Holy Spirit is gentle. He waits. He responds to invitation. And that is why this moment is so important, because it is here that you choose to say, "Come in. Come into the places I've been afraid to open. Come into the areas I've tried to handle on my own." There is something powerful about that kind of surrender. It is not weakness, it is trust. It is the recognition that you no longer want to carry what you were never meant to carry alone. And perhaps for some that feels unfamiliar. You've learned to rely on yourself. You've built strength around independence. You've told yourself, "I'll get through this. I'll figure it out." But there comes a moment when striving becomes exhausting, when holding it all together begins to wear you down. And in that moment, the invitation becomes clear. You don't have to do this alone anymore. When you invite the Holy Spirit into your heart, you are not inviting a distant force. You are welcoming a living presence, a comforter, a healer, one who understands not only what you've gone through, but how it has shaped you. And he doesn't come with condemnation. He comes with compassion. Imagine opening a door you've kept locked for years. Behind it are memories, emotions, and wounds you've tried to forget. And as that door slowly opens, instead of fear rushing in, there is peace. Instead of judgment, there is understanding. Instead of pressure, there is a quiet assurance that you are safe. That is what his presence brings. And sometimes you may not even have the right words. You may not know how to pray in a structured way. But the beauty of this moment is that it doesn't require perfection. It requires willingness. A simple, sincere whisper from your heart is enough. Holy Spirit, I need you. Come into this place. Come into this pain. And when that invitation is real, something begins to happen. It may not be loud. It may not be dramatic. But deep within there is a shift. A gentle stirring. A sense that you are no longer alone in what you're facing. You begin to feel a comfort that doesn't come from circumstances. A calmness that isn't dependent on everything being fixed immediately. It's as if something greater than yourself has stepped in and taken hold of what you could not carry any longer. This is not about escaping your emotions. It's about allowing the Holy Spirit to meet you in them, right where you are. In the middle of the confusion, the hurt, the questions. He meets you there not to overwhelm you, but to walk with you through it. And as you continue to open those hidden places one by one, you will begin to notice something remarkable. The areas that once felt heavy begin to feel lighter. The thoughts that once felt chaotic begin to settle. Not because you've suddenly become stronger, but because you've allowed his strength to take the lead. There is no need to rush this process. The Holy Spirit moves with intention, with care. He restores gently, piece by piece, never forcing, never overwhelming. And every step of the way he remains present. So don't hold anything back now. Not the fear, not the questions, not even the doubt. Bring it all. Let him into every corner, every memory, every emotion. Because it is in that full surrender that the deepest work begins. And when you truly invite him in, you will realize that healing is no longer something you are chasing. It is something that has already begun within you. And as that gentle presence begins to settle within you, as you become aware that you are no longer walking through this alone, something even deeper starts to unfold. It is not just comfort you begin to experience, it is cleansing. A quiet inward work that reaches beyond what can be seen on the surface and begins to touch the very core of your being. Because you see, emotional wounds do not only live in your memories, they leave traces in your thoughts, your reactions, and even the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. Over time, pain can shape patterns of fear, patterns of doubt, patterns of believing things about yourself that were never meant to take root. And without even realizing it, those patterns begin to feel normal. But when the Holy Spirit is invited in, he does not simply comfort you and leave those patterns untouched. He begins to cleanse, not in a harsh or forceful way, but with a tenderness that goes deeper than anything you could do on your own. It is like a quiet washing of the heart. Areas that once felt heavy begin to feel lighter. Thoughts that once seemed overwhelming begin to lose their grip. And you may not even be able to explain how it is happening. You only know that something within you is changing. There are moments when memories rise to the surface. Things you thought you had buried long ago, and instead of pushing them away again, you begin to notice a new response. There is a calmness where there used to be fear. There is a sense of release where there used to be tension. That is the work of inner cleansing. Because true healing is not just about moving forward, it is about being restored from within. There are things the heart holds on to. Bitterness from what was said, guilt from what was done, shame from what was experienced. These things cling quietly, influencing how you see yourself and how you move through life. And no matter how much you try to ignore them, they remain until they are addressed. But you are not asked to remove them by your own strength. You are simply asked to allow the Holy Spirit to do what only He can do. And sometimes, that begins with a simple moment of awareness. You begin to recognize a thought that has been repeating in your mind for years, a thought that tells you are not enough, that you are unworthy, that you are defined by your past. And for the first time, instead of accepting it, something within you resists it. There is a quiet knowing that this is not truth. That is where cleansing begins. It is not always dramatic. Often it is subtle. A thought replaced, a feeling softened, a memory losing its power. Piece by piece, the weight you've carried begins to fall away. And in those moments, you may find yourself releasing things you didn't even realize you were holding on to. A quiet letting go. Not forced, not pressured. just a natural release as something greater takes its place. Because the Holy Spirit does not simply remove, he restores. Where there was heaviness, he brings lightness. Where there was confusion, he brings clarity. Where there was unrest, he brings a deep, steady calm. And as this process continues, you begin to notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how you respond. Situations that once triggered pain no longer hold the same power. Words that once would have wounded you deeply now pass without the same impact. It is not because you have hardened, it is because you have been healed. There is a difference. You are not becoming someone who feels less. You are becoming someone who is no longer controlled by what once held you captive. And all of this begins within. Quietly, gently, faithfully. So allow this work to continue. Do not rush it. Do not question it when it feels unfamiliar. Trust what is happening beneath the surface, even when you cannot fully see it yet. Let every thought be brought into the light. Let every emotion be surrendered. Let every hidden weight be released one by one. Because this cleansing is not just preparing you to feel better, it is preparing you to be free. And as the layers begin to fall away, you will find that what remains is something pure, something steady, something at peace, a heart that is no longer burdened but renewed from within. And as this inner cleansing continues, as the weight begins to lift and your heart feels lighter than it has in a long time, there comes a moment, very quiet, yet deeply significant, where you are faced with something that cannot be ignored any longer. It is the presence of the past. Not just the memory of what happened, but the emotional ties that still remain connected to it. Because even as healing begins, there are often threads that still bind the heart: unforgiveness, resentment, regret. These are not always loud or obvious. Sometimes they sit quietly beneath the surface, influencing your thoughts, shaping your responses, and holding you in a place you were never meant to stay. And this is where a choice begins to form. Not a forced decision, not something rushed, but a gentle invitation placed before you to let go. You see, forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many believe it means pretending something didn't hurt, or excusing what was done. But that is not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not about denying the pain, it is about releasing its hold over you. It is the decision to no longer allow what happened to define how you live, how you feel, and how you see yourself. And I know for some this feels like the most difficult step of all. Because the pain was real, the words were real, the loss, the betrayal, the disappointment, it all left a mark. And part of you may feel that holding on to it is justified, that letting go somehow minimizes what you went through. But listen closely, holding on to that pain does not protect you. It binds you, it keeps the wound open, it keeps the past present. And even when everything around you changes, something within remains stuck in that moment. But when the Holy Spirit is at work within you, he gently begins to shift your perspective, not by forcing you to forget, but by giving you the strength to release. And sometimes that release begins very quietly, a soft willingness, a small step. You may not feel ready to fully let go, but you begin to sense that you no longer want to carry this weight. That is where it starts. Forgiveness is not always a single moment, it is often a process, a journey of surrender, one layer at a time. And you are not expected to do it in your own strength, because left to yourself the heart may resist. But with the Holy Spirit present, something changes. He gives you the ability to do what once felt impossible. And that includes forgiving not only others, but yourself. Because for many, the deepest weight is not what someone else has done. It is what you hold against your own heart. Regret, guilt, the constant replaying of what you wish you had done differently. And without realizing it, you become your own harshest judge. But just as you are being invited to release others, you are also being invited to release yourself. You were never meant to live under the weight of constant condemnation. You were never meant to be defined by your worst moment. And yet, until you let go, that weight remains. So in this moment, as the Holy Spirit continues his work within you, allow yourself to take that step, not because everything suddenly feels resolved, but because you trust the process that has begun. You may find yourself saying, I release this, I let it go. And at first it may feel unfamiliar, but as you continue, something begins to shift. The grip of the past begins to loosen, the emotional charge begins to fade, and in its place, something unexpected begins to rise. Not weakness, not emptiness, but freedom. A quiet freedom that allows you to breathe differently, to think differently, to move forward without constantly looking back. And you begin to realize that forgiveness was never about losing something. It was about gaining something you didn't even know you were missing. Peace, Not a temporary feeling, but a deep, steady presence that settles within your heart when the weight is finally released. So don't hold on to what is already being lifted from you. Don't cling to what you are being freed from. Let it go fully and completely, trusting that what lies ahead is not shaped by what happened before. Because the moment you release the past is the moment you step into the freedom your heart has been waiting for. And as that release begins to take place within you, as the weight of the past loosens its hold and your heart starts to feel a freedom it hasn't known in a long time, something else quietly begins to settle in its place. It is not loud, it is not overwhelming, and it does not demand attention, but it is unmistakable. It is peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything around you being perfect. Not the kind that comes and goes with circumstances, but a deep, steady calm that rises from within. A peace that remains even when questions are still unanswered, even when situations are still unfolding, even when life around you has not yet changed. Because what is happening now is not external, it is internal. For so long you may have believed that peace would come when everything was resolved, when the problem was fixed, when the relationship was restored, when the uncertainty disappeared. And so your sense of calm was always just out of reach, tied to conditions that were constantly shifting. But now, something different is taking place. The Holy Spirit is not waiting for your circumstances to change before bringing you peace. He is placing peace within you right in the middle of where you are. And at first it may feel unfamiliar. You may even question it. How can you feel calm when there are still things unresolved? How can there be stillness when life has been so unsettled? But this peace does not come from understanding everything. It comes from trusting beyond what you understand. It is like a quiet anchor within your soul. While everything around you may continue to move, to shift, to change, there is something within you that remains steady. A sense that you are held, that you are not alone, that you are being carried through even what you cannot yet see clearly. And this peace begins to touch every area of your life. The thoughts that once raced through your mind begin to slow down. The anxiety that once rose so quickly begins to lose its intensity. Situations that once would have overwhelmed you now meet a different response, one that is calm, grounded, and steady. It does not mean you no longer feel. It does not mean you are unaffected by what happens around you, but it does mean that what once controlled you no longer has the same power, because peace has taken its place. And there is something so beautiful about this kind of peace. It does not strive. It does not fight for control. It simply rests. And in that rest you begin to discover a new way of living. You begin to respond rather than react. You begin to listen rather than rush. You begin to trust rather than fear. And even in moments when uncertainty tries to return, when old patterns attempt to rise again, there is now something within you that gently reminds you you are not where you used to be. You may not have all the answers, but you have something greater than answers. You have peace, and that peace becomes a guide. It leads you away from what disturbs your spirit and draws you toward what brings clarity and rest. It quiets the noise that once filled your mind and creates space for something deeper, something steady and true. And as you continue in this place, you begin to realize that peace is not something you visit, it is something you carry. It goes with you into every situation. It remains with you in every conversation. It steadies you in moments that once would have shaken you. And even when challenges arise, even when life presents difficulties, that peace does not disappear. It may feel tested, but it remains. Because it is not built on what is happening around you, it is rooted in what has been placed within you. So allow yourself to rest in it. Do not question it when it feels unfamiliar. Do not search for the old patterns of worry or fear. Let them fade as this new presence becomes more natural, more steady, more real. Because this is what your heart has been longing for all along, not just relief from pain, but a deep and lasting peace that cannot be taken from you. And as you embrace it fully, you will find that no matter what comes, there is something within you that remains unshaken. A quiet, steady peace that stays. And as this peace settles within you, as it becomes more than just a moment and begins to feel like a new way of living, there is something important to understand. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new way of walking. Because what has started within you is alive. It is not a single experience, not a one-time moment that fades with time. It is something that continues, something that grows, something that deepens as you move forward each day. There is a rhythm to this kind of life. A quiet, steady rhythm of returning, of staying connected, of remaining open. And it is in this rhythm that your strength is sustained. You see, it is easy to feel transformed in a moment like this, when everything feels clear, when your heart feels light, when peace feels present. But life continues. Responsibilities return. Situations arise. And if you are not careful, it is possible to drift back into old patterns without even realizing it. Not because the healing was not real, but because it was never meant to stand alone. It was meant to be nurtured. And this is where your daily walk becomes so important. Not in a heavy or pressured way, not as something you must strive to maintain through effort alone, but as a natural continuation of what has already begun within you. A willingness to return again and again to that place of openness, that place of surrender, that place where you first allowed the Holy Spirit to enter and begin His work. It may be in quiet moments. It may be in a simple pause during your day. It may be in a whisper of prayer when you feel the need to reconnect. These moments matter more than you realize. Because every time you turn your attention back, every time you open your heart again, you are strengthening what has already been planted within you. And there will be moments, very real moments, when you feel challenged again, when emotions rise unexpectedly, when situations press against your peace. This does not mean you have gone backwards. It does not mean something has been lost. It simply means you are continuing the journey. And in those moments you now have something you did not have before. You have awareness. You have a foundation. You have a presence within you that you can return to. Instead of being overwhelmed, you can pause. Instead of reacting, you can turn inward. Instead of carrying it alone, you can surrender it again. This is what it means to walk in renewal. It is not about never facing difficulty. It is about no longer facing it the same way. And as you continue in this daily rhythm, something beautiful begins to happen. The changes within you become more stable. The peace becomes more natural. The clarity becomes more consistent. You are no longer reaching for something outside of yourself. You are living from what has already been placed within you. And others will begin to notice it. Not because you are trying to show it, but because it cannot be hidden. There is a steadiness in you, a calmness in the way you respond, a quiet strength that does not need to prove itself. And this is how the work continues, not just within you, but through you. Because the same presence that has brought healing to your heart will begin to flow into the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you carry yourself in the world. And yet, even as this happens, you remain grounded in the simplicity of what brought you here. Not complexity, not performance. Just a heart that stays open, a heart that returns, again and again, to that place of connection. So do not think of this as something you must hold on to tightly. Think of it as something you continue to step into day by day, moment by moment. Let it grow naturally, let it deepen quietly, let it become part of who you are. Because this is not just a moment of healing, it is the beginning of a life that is continually being renewed, strengthened, and sustained from within. And as you continue to walk in this way, you will find that what once felt temporary has become something lasting. A steady, quiet strength that remains with you every single day.